So welcome to our final Gather and Grow of the season. And this is a 3-week series embracing change and transition, helping us all to age faithfully. These sessions build on each other, so we hope that you can make it to all 3 of them. If you happen to miss something, know that it is being recorded, and you can go on our website and watch it then later. So you may have seen the quote as you were coming in, just to sort of whet your appetite a little bit for what is to come. I also want to let you know that there are pens on the back table and paper if you need and want to take notes. And there will be some handouts that we'll give you at the end, like 5 pillars of transitions and what constitutes a life transition, so you don't have to write those down when they're up on the board, but we don't trust you to give them to you now, so they will be after. And another lovely reading that we will give you to send home with you, and then we'll start next week with that. I'm thinking that's all the detail stuff. So I'm so excited because I get to do this with, well, I'm not doing much, but I get to be with 2 of my really good friends. Many of you know Anita because Anita has been here like 7 years, and she and I have been teaching together a Tuesday morning group, and Lectio Divina on Wednesdays. Anita is a spiritual director, a podcaster. She has like 30 plus years in national radio, and she's just such a gift to us here at Church of the Palms. And then we're really excited because Susan Larson, who's actually in our Tuesday morning class and is this gifted teacher, and Susan comes to us as, she has her master's in education and she's a certified counselor, but she's also a life coach and a coach particularly in things that we're going to talk about today in change and transition. So she teaches it and she brings us this new idea for us to wrap our heads around. So I'm really excited to really be learning right alongside you. Did I forget anything? All right, so we have invited Anita to come up and to lead us in a little centering as we get started.
Well, you know this is an important topic or you wouldn't be here, right? You're interested in this. We're all about change and transition. And I just want to have us close our eyes. Just want to give us this brief centering experience. And I'm going to use a poem for that is about changing. It's called I Am Changing. And so let's take a couple of deep breaths in and out. Get comfortable as we prepare to hear more from Susan. Let me just give us a few seconds of silence as we listen to this poem. Bless the confusion, let it be. Commend it to earth like autumn leaves scattering, half-rotten, seeding the future, becoming fertile food for sleeping rose roots. Be a leaf, lie low, be blown, receive rain, fly to earth, become a rose. I bless the confusion and let be between seasons. I am changing into me. Amen.
Good morning. This title kind of suggests that we are going to get our arms around, we're going to embrace this topic and not fear it. And I commend all of you for being here this morning and deciding to take the time to dive deeper into understanding how to navigate change and transition in turbulent times. And one of the things that we realize is that making change and transition is a life skill, except many of us did never get any instruction. We didn't have people that constantly helped us update and guided us. And so we are very fortunate because there are some people more recently that have become what we call wayfinders. These are the people that have done the research, that have done the writing, that have walked it themselves, and now give us some new tools and some new ways of thinking about making change and transition in the unpredictable times that we live in. And what we are blessed to do here in our faith community is look at it as we try to age faithfully as well. One of those key wayfinders is Bruce Feiler. And Lori has done a wonderful job of capturing his book for you, which we'll be using over the three weeks. Life is in the Transitions. And he has a subtitle there, which is Mastering Change at Any Age. Because the catalyst for this work was that Bruce, in his early 40s, faced three major disruptors. A serious health challenge, financial trouble, and his career was upended. On top of that, at the same time, his father, who he had always looked up to and was a real pillar in their town, had emotional and physical issues and was in crisis. So he had to dive deep, and as he said, it was a period of some fear and shame in his life that made him really step back and rely on others and look deep and do a much more probing look at how does one navigate when things don't go as we expect, and also in a world where there's so many outside factors. What you may find, if you're curious, like Anita, Lori, and I, you may be interested in his book, but also perhaps his blog, which is The Nonlinear Life, which you can sign up for, and also he has a wonderful TED Talk that is called How to Master Life Transitions. It's delightful, and it's about 1 hour. And so you begin to get a sense of what this wayfinder can bring to us in terms of a new lens on transition and change. Today we will share some helpful background and definitions and framework about change and transition, because we thought it'd be helpful for us to all be on the same page and just sort of refresh our memories on a few things. And then we'll possibly begin to shift our lens as we explore some myths and assumptions about how life unfolds and how we effectively make change. Feiler believes in the power of stories and writing. And so one of the things we've invited you to do is, and I notice that some of you have writing material with you, is to write and journal as you think about with us over the next 3 weeks this topic and how you are experiencing change and transition or looking forward to it. What we thought we would start with is some important sort of backdrop definitions, and these come from another wayfinder, Nancy Schlossberg. And we're fortunate that Nancy has chosen to spend her latter years in Sarasota, and so many of you may have encountered her. And in her work and research, Dr. Schlossberg began to give us a framework to think about change and transition. Starting off, she helps us with a definition that change is a situation or event that can happen or that you make happen that alters your life. We think of change as most often situational, and it can range from the simple and mundane to a defining event. And then there's the second part of that, and that's her definition of what transition is. It's the psychological internal process and path we take to adjust to change or change is. Bruce Feiler has a little different definition, which Lori has put up here. He calls it transition. He says that a transition is a vital period of adjustment, creativity, and rebirth that helps one find meaning after a major life disruption. So we can kind of go with both of those. They may be helpful for us. He feels that we may go through a period of discomfort. We may go through periods of fear and a host of emotions, but he feels that there can be a reordering and a rebirth, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in just about a minute. The next part that Nancy Schlossberg gives us is a way to think of the types of changes that happen with a transition. We may have a change of role. We may have a change in our relationships, some new, some that will be leaving us, some that we choose, some that we curtail. Change in routine, where our surroundings and our energy is altered, our schedule, our time. There could be a change in our assumptions, the way that we see things, the way that we see ourselves. Many people say their change in assumptions about how they thought things would be at this time of their life, that's one that they're dealing with. And then change about oneself and the world, okay? And lastly, Nancy coins 3 different kinds of transitions. One is the elected transition, the one that we decide, that we put in motion, okay, that we expect, and that we have time to choose, consider, and hopefully plan for. Then there's the unelected transition. Transitions that are not expected and test our coping and response skills, and they may be negative or positive. And then there's the non-event. There are the events that we always thought that we would experience, that we expect to happen in our lives, and that they have not yet occurred. We often need to modify our thinking and our future orientation. I was speaking to a neighbor of mine, and she said, I was not able to have children, and she said, but today she and her husband really are involved with a school in Costa Rica and making a difference for hundreds of children. So she has found a way to make a difference in the lives of young people. Yeah. So one of the things that we can do that Filer really recommends is we can begin to look at myths. In other words, what are some things that we always thought about, but gee, you know, maybe things aren't turning out the way we thought, or maybe I need to reconsider some of my previous thinking. One that I see a lot is, gee, change that works for others might work for me. Okay. How many of you have experienced that thought? Okay. Another one. My learning is complete by a certain age. If I or we choose to remain the same, things will stay the same. Okay. And if I elect a transition, it will play out on my expected time frame. Okay. The expectation that newer and bigger is better. And here's one that we hear increasingly, that we used to believe that our lives would ascend to a certain point and then decline at a certain point. And that keeps floating in terms of how that life trajectory, and can we reinvent, and what are the best years of our lives, that whole notion. But underneath that too is the expectation that things will get better for each generation. Are there some other myths that you're aware of, any of you, that you're finding that you have questioned, that you are questioning in terms of, as I thought about how life would unfold and making change and transition, are there any sort of myths or things, expectations that you're having to look at? Anybody? Oh, good.
Is this on? This one?
This is sort of a joke, is that everybody else would get old and die, but I wouldn't.
Oh, did everyone hear her? Yeah, okay.
And there's the myth about the golden years
Mm-hmm. Okay.
that aren't quite.
Do you want to say more, or?
That we're going to be different. For example, when we were in our 40s, let's say, or even late 30s, we would be sitting at the table with my mother-in-law, and she would be talking about our aches and pains, and my husband and I pinky swore we would never do that.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to be like that. But you
Oh.
don't realize that that becomes your reality,
Yes.
and that's what you are. So that
Yes.
is definitely a myth.
Deborah's got the mic over there as well, as you raise your hands, so we can thank you.
I always thought that we would grow older and so would all of our friends and they would all live as long as we're gonna live. And we lost like 6 last year and we are reeling from that.
Thank you.
That once our children got jobs, careers, families of their own, that we would stop, or that I would stop worrying about them.
Oh, that's a good one. Thank you. Yes.
One of the things that I thought is, as I watched older people, they moved more slowly. It took them more time. That wasn't going to happen to me.
I hear a lot of exceptionalism. Okay.
My husband and I had a trip planned to the Holy Land before COVID. It got canceled twice, and we said, that's okay. We have time. We'll go at another time. You know, you don't always have time, and things happen. And so we're probably not going to the Holy Land.
Okay. Yeah.
I lost my only child a couple years ago. He was 38 years old. So that just happens to other people. It could never happen to me.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
I have, I guess, a myth, I think, also about raising children that I thought, you know, my husband and I raised our 5 daughters. We get the T-shirt, they're out. And we're in this whole new sort of living now with adult children that need a whole new set of rules. I mean, they ask for advice and then they don't follow it. And you go, well, wait a minute. We have some wisdom here to impart, and it's like this whole other, like, unnavigated landscape that I just thought I was done, and the change and the growth just keeps on coming.
Yeah. And that ties in with, too, when we were saying what can change, roles, responsibilities that you float in and out, and it morphs, and anybody else. So these are great. These are great. Well, we'll probably continue to have those things pop over the 3 weeks, and it is helpful for us to catch ourselves. What we're trying to do today is sort of raise your antenna on this topic so that we can all be more aware of what are the assumptions and what are the things that are still working for me, and what are some assumptions and things that I need to let go of and that I need to work with. One of the things that Filer gives us is some pillars of transitions. And what he's trying to do is help us with our expectations and shift our lens. So this is something that we're thinking is helpful to go over quickly before we move to another exercise. One is that transitions are becoming more plentiful. Does that sound accurate for you? We find as we mature that the amount of change, whether it's around us, whether it's our own internal change, that we can expect that the speed of and the pace of transition and change is happening in our world today at a faster clip. Also, and this, if there's one thing he wants you to remember, transitions are non-linear, not predictable. How many of you read Gail Sheehy's Passages years ago? Okay. Even the word predictable was in her description. And she's talked about the troubling 20s and the 30s, and then there was that critical decade of the 40s, and she didn't go any further from the 40s, which she apologized for later. But it was kind of like, oh, and you're going to do this then, and your midlife crisis will happen here. Even Kubler-Ross, in terms of her stages of grief. Even Erik Erikson, remember him? Those 8 stages. And what is kind of, again, we can chuckle, his wife Joan, who outlived him, added a 9th stage because she realized, no, we're not done. But we lived through an industrialized era where we're used to things having a process, a framework. We liked things that we could sort of say it's going to happen this way or at this time. So that's a lot of what we were exposed to in terms of the frameworks at that time. And one of the things that we know is that it created a sense of shoulds and a sense of false expectations about going through what we were going to experience and when. Then there's the next one, that it can take longer than you think. Bruce Feiler did a lot of research using 225 people's life stories in 50 states. And then he had a team of 12 people, and they drilled down and they began to look at themes and patterns, timing, all kinds of things. That is what he has pulled together in terms of his book. And one of the things that they found is that many times transitions were taking 4 to 5 years. He feels that they're autobiographical, and so it's a chance to revisit your life story. In the work that I'm involved in working with transition and change, we use a lot of words: reorder, reinvent, reconsider. And that's very much what he says we do, is we revisit our life story, we have new chapters to write, and we revisit and think about who we are becoming, and we can begin to question and let go of some habits, patterns, thinking that may be stopping us or in our way. And then 5, he says, basically, transitions are essential to growing and not getting stuck. Okay. In the time that we have left, we thought that it would be interesting and something we can build on to consider, each of us, what change or transition are you experiencing or anticipating? And one of the things that's helpful, I think, for us to get a gauge on is, do you feel prepared? How will you navigate? And what is your process and sources of support? Laura, I need to just check in with you. Should we do this individually or?
So we talked about talking in little tiny groups of like 2 or 3, that if you would spend just a few minutes together talking about that, and then we'd like to come back together and hear from you. Okay. So that you have a little bit of warm-up time right now of changes or transitions that you're experiencing and are anticipating, and some of those questions, and then we want to hear back from you. Yeah. Ready, set, go.
Yeah.
5 minutes or so.
Just people around you, a couple of people, yeah. 2 or 3, yeah. Now, this is an unusual group. Usually, when I do workshops, I have a chime, and I tell them I'm serious when I hit it the third time, so, so you quiet down well. What I'd like to do is get a sense of some of the things that came up in your discussion with each other. I was enjoying watching your nonverbal behavior. Many of you were leaning in, a lot of laughter, and would like to have anybody who would like to share with the whole group some of the things that came up.
I thought you would share our group. I think I'm going to breach it confidentially.
We're breaching confidentiality here. Yeah.
We decided most of us are not prepared for change that happens suddenly.
Sudden change.
And in regard to the aging process, some of us are still surprised. We don't really know how to navigate all of it, and our process and support comes up out of need.
Other people, things that came up. Yes.
I think something that has startled me is the lack of control that I have now over my own situation and other people's. Always before I could navigate better and figure out what to do and come to a good solution. And sometimes that doesn't happen anymore.
Okay. I thought that was interesting this morning when Steve was talking about learning to float. I was thinking, boy, does this tie in? Yeah. Anybody else?
We're realizing we can't take care of the home we have anymore without help, and we're having to call our son, and he's busy with teenagers, so he doesn't always have time. So we feel like we need to downsize, which means get rid of our wonderful stuff. All that. We have no plan whatsoever. None. No plan.
Yeah, we talked about, while I complain about change is pretty important in our lives. If somebody told us we couldn't change, that would be pretty devastating. But we talked about things like health changes.
Yes.
We moved down to Florida.
Yeah.
Our families changed, a death in the family, things like that we've had to respond to.
Great. Yeah. All good insights. Yes. Marcia?
When I heard Marilyn say that her 38-year-old son had died and he was an only child, I felt I needed to come and talk with her because we lost our 26-year-old son. And it is quite a process that you go through, and you continue to go through it. With our son, it will have been 30 years in December that he died. So, but there are still things that we deal with, and Marilyn is still dealing with things.
Sure.
And it's good to have somebody to talk with.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. And we're going to talk about the importance of support. And we're fortunate here in our faith community that we have so many sources of support when going through difficult life changes. Yes?
Yes. Betsy and I have been actively involved in working on this idea of aging in place. We have a 2,000 square foot house. We don't have a McMansion empty with lack of children up north or something like that. So we believe that we can successfully transition in place for quite a while. And we did the grab bars and the shower stalls and all that stuff a few years back. And recently started removing things. We had beautiful stone pathways and everything, which can potentially become tripping hazards. And we replaced a wooden deck that I knew would rot with a beautiful patio with tile. You know, all this stuff planning in the future. And somebody, you know, the idea also of, you know, where do the children and everything fit into it? Between the two of us, we have one child who lives 3,000 miles away. So part of our aging plan for 5 years has been we need to plug into places. That's one reason we're at the Church of the Palms. We need to be surrounded by community in a way that large families do not. Things that a large family can take for granted, we cannot take for granted. So we have 3 different groups of people that we're actively involved. We give as well as receive in all 3 of them. But it's important for us to be surrounded by like-minded people and where we have a sense of family.
Oh, thank
and
you.
we feel that here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And it's interesting when we talk about a shifting lens, to your credit, your shifting lens about the importance of safety and adapting, and I hear that with many of you. Yeah. Well, we're off to a great start, and I hope that you'll be able to join us in the next 2 weeks, because we're going to do a deeper dive into some of the wonderful wisdom that Filer gives us, and we're going to talk about disruptors and life quakes. Life quakes are when many disruptors come together at one time. And we also are going to be talking about how we can begin to shape-shift our lives and adapt. And he has a wonderful 7-part toolkit that he gives us, which is, I think, something that we all are looking for in terms of a way forward. We'll be sharing that week 3. What we've handed out today is a list of quotes from Julia Cameron. Many of you may have read her Artist's Way or some of her other books. She's a wonderful, gifted person, and we thought that many of these quotes might resonate with you. So we're going to open with these next time. And you have some of the things that we went over today with you. And we'd like to revisit this question next week when you've had maybe a chance to think about even more things that this question brings to mind. I want to thank you for being with us, and look forward to hopefully seeing many of you the next 2 weeks as well. Yes?
Bruce Filer's book information up there
Sure.
again so that I can write it down.
Yeah.
Oh, it's on the bottom.
There you go. Okay.
You don't have to, because now I've been told.
It's
Yeah.
on the bottom of the back side of that second page.
It is. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you.